The first-class cabin was silent except for the soft hum of the engines, a sanctuary with the world's wealthiest and most powerful often traveled, undisturbed, but that peace shattered in an instant when a loud smack echoed through the air, silencing every passenger around. Eyes widened, gasps followed. A flight attendant had just slapped a black man in an Armani suit. What no one in that cabin realized at that moment was that the man she had just humiliated was no ordinary passenger. He was a CEO, a self-made billionaire who had built his empire from scratch, a man who carried both the weight of his people's struggles and the pride of his accomplishments wherever he went. The sting of her hand against his cheek wasn't just physical. It was wound to his dignity. He sat there for a moment, stunned, trying to process what had just happened. The attendant's face was twisted with disdain. Her voice, sharp as she hissed, "People like you don't belong here. You must have taken the wrong seat." Her words dripped with venom, and suddenly the slap seemed like the smallest insult compared to the arrogance behind them. Passengers looked away, some in shock, others too uncomfortable to interfere. The CO's chest tightened, not from anger, but from the familiar ache of knowing that, no matter how high he climbed, the shadow of prejudice followed. But what she didn't know was that life had trained him for moments like this. As a boy, he had watched his mother clean houses, her hands rough from endless scrubbing, while whispering to him that he was destined for more. He had faced rejection after rejection from banks, investors, and boardrooms. Yet every time he rose higher, and now seated in the luxury of first class, his very existence was proof that he had overcome. That slap wasn't just an insult to him. It was an insult to every ounce of hard work, sacrifice, and perseverance that had brought him here. The silence in the cabin stretched until finally a passenger across the aisle spoke up. A white businessman in his 50s leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Ma'am, that was completely out of line," he said firmly. Another woman, clutching her pearls, muttered, "This is outrageous." The murmur of disapproval began to spread. For the first time, the flight attendant's confident smirk faltered. The CEO took a deep breath and slowly rose to his feet. His voice, calm, yet commanding, carried through the cabin. "I paid for this seat like anyone else. I have every right to be here. No one has the right to put their hands on me, especially not someone who is supposed to serve and protect passengers on this plane." His words weren't shouted, but they cut through the air with undeniable authority. Unbeknownst to the flight attendant, the captain had been alerted by the crew about an incident in first class. Within minutes, he appeared, his expression serious as he asked for an explanation. The flight attendant, flustered, tried to twist the story, claiming the passenger was aggressive and out of place. But before she could finish, several witnesses jumped in, their voices overlapping as they described what really happened. The slap, the words, the humiliation. The captain turned to the CEO. "Sir, on behalf of this airline, I deeply apologize. This behavior is unacceptable." Then, turning to the flight attendant, his tone hardened. "You're relieved of your duties immediately. Gather your things." Her jaw dropped, her face drained of color. She stammered, But I was just..." The captain cut her off. "No excuses. You're done." As security escorted her away, whispers rippled through the cabin. Some passengers clapped softly. Others nodded at the CEO in silent respect. He didn't bask in their applause. Instead, he sat down slowly, closing his eyes for a moment. The slap still burned on his cheek. But what burned hotter was the memory of his journey, the little boy who had been told he'd never make it, the teenager who had been followed through stores, the young man whose business ideas were laughed out of boardrooms. Each insult, each rejection had been fuel. And now, even in this moment of humiliation, he chose dignity over rage. 10 minutes later, as the plane leveled off in the sky, the businessman across the aisle leaned over. I have to say, the way you handled that was incredible. Most people would have lost it. The CEO gave a small, weary smile. When you've been fighting battles your whole life, you learn which ones to fight with fire and which ones to fight with calm. The rest of the flight passed quietly, but the story of what happened in first class would not remain confined to the cabin. Passengers filmed, whispered, and later shared the story online. Within hours, headlines blazed across social media. Flight attendant fired after assaulting black CEO in first class. The video of him speaking with grace and strength spread like wildfire, inspiring millions who saw not just a man who endured injustice, but a leader who showed that dignity was the greatest form of power. When he landed, reporters were already waiting, cameras flashing, voices calling his name. He stopped only once to give a statement. What happened today was painful, but not new. Discrimination doesn't stop at the boardroom doors or the first-class cabin. But I stand here to say this. We rise anyway. We rise with dignity. We rise with strength. And we rise for those who come after us. That's what true leadership is. And with that, he walked away, not as a victim of a slap, but as a symbol of perseverance and triumph. The incident that was meant to humiliate him became the spark for change, a reminder to the world that no matter how high prejudice tries to reach, dignity will always rise higher.